Running a small travel company, we get asked a lot about what to pack. And we have some great episodes about that and an awesome packing list. But it's also really important to know what not to pack. Usually people will say, like, I packed too much. So, of course, don't pack too much. But how will you know if you're going to need it or you're not going to need it, or if it will or won't work where you're going to be going? So, today we're going to speak specifically just to if you're going to be spending a week on a sailboat with us or spending time on a sailboat with anybody, you want to take some of these things into consideration because living on a sailboat is a little bit different than living on land.
Welcome to the What Could Go Right podcast. We are your hosts, Erik, Orton.
And I'm Emily Orton.
And here we talk about personal growth and sailing. In 2014, we moved aboard a fixer-upper sailboat and bootstrapped a year sailing with our 5 kids, and it changed our lives forever.
We tell the whole story in our memoir, our book, 7 at Sea. On this podcast, we want to help you go from fear to freedom, one adventure at a time.
So yeah, I just got back from the Bahamas, and we were both in the Virgin Islands before that. So this is all fresh on our mind, which we're going to talk about. And I want to stress, if anybody that's been on our trip is feeling singled out, this is not your fault. This is us getting better and better at communicating what's going to work on a boat. And so we're just trying to learn as we go and share what we're learning with you so that you can have the most fun and the most successful adventures, whether it's with us or somewhere else or doing something else. But yeah, what Emily was saying about being on a boat, some things that we take for granted, having lived on a boat, we realize, oh, that's not obvious to most people. And so it's sort of us recognizing our blind spots about things that are just common knowledge or common sense to us as
not so common.
But not so, it's common knowledge amongst people who have lived on a boat, but we don't take people that have lived on a boat. We take people who are interested or curious about living on a boat. So
I'll say for us, for example, when we first moved aboard our sailing vessel Fezziwig in 2014, one of the precious items that I insisted upon packing was our blender. My dad used to work for K-Tech Blenders. I had a really good blender. It's the BlendTech blender. I loved it for so many reasons, for everything. We brought it aboard the boat, and I could not use it.
Right away.
Yeah, unless I took it to shore and plugged it in on shore, or I got a generator and I plugged it into the generator. That's how it worked on our boat. I didn't really understand very much about electricity. On land, everything I wanted to plug in just worked great. And on a boat, the systems work a little bit differently, and you're not plugged into a big power grid. And so that's one of the things. Electrical items are one of the things that we'll definitely be talking about, and listen in for which ones are what not to pack and what might be some workarounds or alternatives for those things, because of course we want you to be comfortable. And I want to echo what Erik was saying earlier, like no one's getting singled out. For all our guests who have helped us to learn these things and refine our process, we just want to thank you so much. You're just helping us get better every day.
So I'm just going to start with a list of things that might be common household items that are...
I actually wonder, could you tell a little bit about the 12 volt and 110? What makes it a little different?
Should start there?
Yeah, like here's why.
Okay, yeah. So 12 volts, that's like a car battery. Everybody has a car battery, and your car works on a 12 volt system. Your house works on 110 volts. And for example, you could never plug a microwave into your car and have it work. You could never plug a vacuum into your car and have it work. Trust me, I've tried. Both of those items.
We've tried.
Even with an adapter or a little miniature inverter, I've burnt out the inverter. And so just think of a boat. Almost all systems on a boat run off of 12 volt batteries, very much like you'll find in a car. And so to run, and certain appliances or items draw big amounts of power for short periods of time. And no matter how long or short that draw is, you need to have enough electricity to run it. Some examples would be a blender or a microwave. If you want to microwave something for 1 minute, you have to have enough power regardless of whether you're running it for a minute or 10 minutes.
And I would say one of those that really surprises me is like a toaster. You're like, oh, it's just heating up 2 pieces of bread. How much power can it really use? A lot. A
Yeah.
lot of power.
Yeah. Anytime you're using like a hot pad or something that's creating a lot of, where the goal is to create heat using electricity, it's a lot of power. So just think of the boat like a car, a 12-volt battery system, and 110 volt is the regular electricity that you get in your outlets.
At
And
home on
at
land.
home. And maybe a way to think about it is that then you have things at home that also require special wiring, like a washing machine requires a 220 volt outlet. You would never plug a washing machine into a regular outlet in your home. So there's all kind, there are things in our regular world on land that equate to the water, and there's a lot more washing machine type things on a boat than there are on land. So, in terms of just needing to have extra power on hand. So things that are great on a boat are things like a smartphone or an iPad. Those you can charge on pretty much any 12-volt outlet, the kind that where you just plug in the USB cable and it will charge. No problem at all with that.
Like a rechargeable flashlight.
Yeah,
That's one
a
that I use.
headlamp, rechargeable flashlight, a smartphone or an iPad, or something that you can just plug in, or even an iWatch, something that will plug into one of those USB outlets will run no problem on a boat. Where you start to get into a little bit of tricky territory is when it requires a 2-prong outlet to plug in. And that's when you're switching over to 110. Some examples of things like that would be a hair dryer or a heat pad or
Coffee
a
maker.
coffee maker or a CPAP machine or a microwave or a toaster or I'm literally just trying to like
Oh, if you
blender.
a blender, and we've also had people bring this super awesome, I think it was called like a PMF mat, and whatever, it was just a mat that had electricity running through it that was supposed to have some healing properties, but it was a 2-prong plug-in.
Yeah, and the same thing for even a laptop. And I bring my laptop on every trip, and when I charge it, I have to be strategic about when I charge it. So the boat by default will always run on 12-volt power. Anytime you want to run or charge any of these other items,
Ooh, a curling iron.
a curling iron is another example
Mm-hmm.
of a 110 volt appliance or item. So anytime you want to use some of these bigger items, there is a way on a boat, but here's the secret. You have to be running the generator. And even on the boat, there are a lot of items that require this higher power source. I'm not trying to get religious here. For example, a lot of the boats that we take out have air conditioning, or they'll have a water maker and
Refrigerator.
well, the refrigerator is a little bit of a special case because
Oh, okay. Well, we won't get into special cases right
yes,
now.
the refrigerator will run all the time, but we want to conserve battery power so that the fridge will run all the time. Because if we drain the batteries with everything else, then the fridge doesn't work. So there's a little bit of a budgeting process on a boat that most people is new to most people because we never really think about, oh, I have to budget the amount of electricity that I'm going to use because we have a finite amount that our battery bank can hold. And when we draw that down, usually it happens overnight because everyone goes to bed. The fridge keeps running. Everyone plugs in all their devices to charge overnight, and the batteries get low, low, low. So that wake up in the morning and you want to turn on something and it doesn't work because there's not enough power left because overnight everything's been drawn down and we were not running the generator. So there's 2 solutions. Run the generator all the time.
Okay, so what are the pros of running the generator all the time?
The pros of running the generator all the time are 1, you can run any device that you want at any time. One exception is we'll never run the generator while we're sailing or moving the boat. So whenever that happens, you won't be able to toast your bagel while we're sailing the boat because the generator won't be running. But
Okay.
anytime we're stopped or at anchor, we can run the generator.
Okay, what are some downsides of running? I mean, it sounds amazing. Like, why not just always run the generator? I'm playing devil's advocate here. I like to keep the generator off.
You're good at it. So yeah, the generator.
I'm good at it.
Good reasons to not run the generator are we're oftentimes in very remote, beautiful, quiet places. And to really enjoy them, it's nice to not have the generator rumbling in the background. This comes up for me a lot when I'm out camping. I go to a campground and let's say I'm in Yosemite and somebody comes up next to us, sets up next to us, and they run their generator so that they can have all their devices running.
On their RV or something.
A lot of campgrounds will have quiet hours for generators specifically for this reason. They say you cannot run your generator between, I don't know, 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. or 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. because it's a kind of noise pollution. And on a sailing boat, one of the things that I love about going out is that it's quiet and it's calm and it's soothing. And as much as I love to have all my devices work all the time, I also really value the peace and quiet that comes with not having the generator running.
And I think that's something that a lot of people value. For example, most often when given the option between air conditioning and having the sea breezes cool your room, the people who come sailing are like, wow, I would love to have my room cooled by sea breezes. It's plenty cool. I feel great and it's so quiet and I can look up out of basically the window in the top of my cabin, the hatch, and see the stars. And it's one of the really, really special things about being able to go on a sailing trip and go to a remote, beautiful places like this. Sometimes people want to keep the generators running or for health reasons, they need that, but it then it negates that, or it takes away that option, that opportunity to be in the healing stillness.
Yeah. So one thing I'll say is just it is about kind of getting on the same page as a group about, do we want to run the air conditioning at night, or do we want to have the sounds? Do we want to have our hatches open and look at the stars? And do we want to be able to hear the sea and the wind at night, which can be really, really beautiful and soothing? And sometimes you're like, you know what, it's just really muggy and stuffy and we just want to sleep comfortably. Totally fine. There's no wrong answer, but that's a little bit of the trade-off. And so when we're running the generator, we can run air conditioning. We can also run the water maker, which will pull in seawater and turn it into fresh water that it puts into our tanks. And oftentimes that's a necessity depending on, where we can and cannot get water. And so oftentimes I'll be running the generator regardless, just so that we can have enough fresh water for everybody throughout the trip. The great thing is that when the generator is running for those reasons, it's a great time to charge your devices and be able to run all the appliances without any issues.
Okay, so this would be maybe one of the accommodations. So for example, say you have an item that typically plugs in and you need to charge it, or you're charging a battery so that your item that usually plugs in can run off a battery.
Like my laptop, let's say.
Yeah.
So when the generator is running, that's when I plug my laptop in and charge it up so that when the generator is off, I have a full laptop and I can use it for whatever I want.
And you might do that with a CPAP as well.
Yeah, a CPAP with a battery pack.
I'm trying to think of some of those other items. That might be when you're like, hey, generator's running. I'm going to take my quick boat shower and then blow dry my hair because I just love how my hair looks when it's blow dried, or whatever reason you like to use a blow dryer. That would be your time to say, I'm going to take care of that. I'm going to blow dry my hair or curl my hair or whatever you wanted to do there. It doesn't work for every item. So for example, if you need a hot pad, you might have to find like a battery pack you could plug it into, or something that our daughters and our family learned to love to use both in Portugal and New Zealand they call them hotties, but it's just
you have a hottie waiting in your bed for you.
I know it might feel so old fashioned, but it's just one of those plastic hot water bottles, and they come with little like a furry case or something that makes it, so that the plastic of the water bottle doesn't burn your skin. But there's always a kettle on board and you can heat up some water, fill your hot water bottle.
Just to be clear, the stoves on all of our boats run on propane. So the stove and the oven are completely separate from the electrical system, which means that if you want to create something hot using the stove, that's no problem at all.
Yeah.
any time of day.
So you could any time of day without making a big fuss or a lot of noise or waking anybody else up, you could heat up the kettle. You could fill your water bottle and then take that and have that to be your cozy. Or if you wanted, for example, coffee or toast, you could heat up the kettle on the stovetop and make coffee on the stovetop. And you could also make toast in the oven, and it works great for that if you don't feel like you want to wait for the toaster, or if you're an early riser, or and you don't want to wake everybody else on the boat up with the generator just so you can grab your cup of coffee. There are ways around it.
I'll say the breakfast is sort of the trickiest time in terms of electricity because overnight the fridge has run, people have had their fans on, or they've been charging their smaller devices or their bigger devices, and the batteries get drawn down overnight. And then you want to make a cup of coffee or toast a bagel or something like that, and there's not enough power in the batteries to run either.
Mm-hmm.
And so at some early hour, and everyone sleeps to different times of day on our trips, the generator must be turned on for those items to function, or people need to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a little bit of a balancing act. And so, and we're trying to figure this out. But basically, to run one example of an appliance that we've have not mentioned that requires high electricity is a coffee maker,
Mm-hmm.
because it's basically heating up a metal plate to brew the coffee. And so at what point do you turn on the generator in the morning so that you can run the coffee maker, especially if the batteries are low and you can't get it to work just based on battery power? So, like Emily was saying, there are options. You can do instant coffee with hot water, or we can just say, hey, we're going to be turning the generator on at 7 a.m. And
You can sleep through it
if
if
you're
you
asleep
want.
and you want to keep sleeping, there will just be a
Good-
generator running. Or if
Good
you,
luck.
or if you want to have coffee and you wake up at 5:30, you're just going to need to wait until 7 a.m. because that's the designated coffee maker time. So that's something that's one reason we want to talk about this, is so that whether you're on a trip with us or whether you're going to live on a boat by yourself, this was one of the toughest wake up calls for us when we moved on to Fezziwig, because we had a very simple boat, electrically speaking, and we had no way of visually seeing what our battery levels were at, or if power was going into them, or how fast it was coming out. And so we were really operating blind. And one of the first electrical projects that I tackled that was kind of recommended to me was to install what's called a battery monitor, where you can see the level of your batteries. And the boats that we take out have these monitors. And so we can see if they're high or low, if power is coming out, and if so, at what rate, and if not, and if it's going in, if we're running the generator or running the engines, because the engines of the boat also feed power into the batteries. We can see that. And in fact, we were on this trip most recently
In the Bahamas.
And nobody was using the microwave, but it was plugged in. And I happened to be sitting at the desk where I read the instruments. And I was, because I kind of take notes on this stuff throughout the week to make sure I know how to manage it. And I saw the amperage draw on the batteries drop from 40 something down to 20 something, and nothing had changed. I turned around and said, what just happened? What got unplugged? And somebody said, oh, well, I unplugged the microwave. The microwave was not being used, but just by virtue of being plugged in, it was drawing enough power through it that it was draining the batteries pretty quickly. So sometimes it needs to be unplugged.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, there's a bit more of a balancing act to manage your electricity, and we won't talk about it today, but the same thing goes for water.
Yeah, we can do that at a different time.
And I think just to identify a few areas: electricity, water, internet communication. Most people have varying levels of connectivity depending on their carrier on a boat. And then the other is, what do you do with your garbage? You have a garbage bag full of stuff, wrappers, cans, whatever, and on a boat, here we take it outside our house, we put it in the bin that then goes down to the street once a week and it gets carried away. On a boat, you carry it with you until you get to a place where you can do that.
And then on the island, they have limited resources about what to do with it as well. So that would be good to talk about.
Some cases they'll take it, some cases they won't. In some cases they'll take it and they'll charge you to take it. But anyway, these are just some things that oftentimes we don't really get into.
We take them for granted on land.
Yeah, on land we take for granted that there's always more water, There's always more electricity. There's plenty of internet for everybody, and the garbage will always get carried away by somebody else. And on a boat, none of that's true.
That's right. Well, I like what you were saying about, getting unplugged, and all of the things that plug in are the things that you might not want to bring. And the most important thing to keep unplugged while you're on one of these sailing trips, I think, is just you. I read a meme recently, and it just said, most things, if you just unplug it and then plug it back in, they'll start working again. Like, it's usually that simple. And it said, including you, including people. So I would say the majority of people who come on the trips don't bring any two-pronged things to plug in, but some people need them and some people didn't think of it. And so this is just like a wake-up call to us to help set the expectation and let people know, if you're going on a sailboat, it's a little bit different in ways you may not have expected. And that's just part of the deal. But hopefully the most important thing that you unplug is yourself. And that the irony is that when you unplug on one of these trips, you can return recharged.
Unplug to power up. What could go right? Hey guys, it's Erik. Before we sign off, I just want to give you the sailing update. For those of you that are interested in sailing with us sooner rather than later, we do have a couple of last minute spots that have opened up. A couple of people have had to shift around. So we're going to be in the Bahamas, March 31st through April 5th. We have a couple of cabins open. So if that works for you, we're going to sail in and out of Nassau, sailing the beautiful Exuma Islands. If you want to sail with us a little bit further out on the calendar, June 7th through the 14th, we're going to be in Italy. All these next trips are in Europe, in the Mediterranean. Italy, Naples, beautiful spot, June 7th through the 14th. Greece, sailing out of Athens, July 19th through the 26th. Croatia, a town called Split. We're going to discover it together. I haven't been there before. So August 2nd through the 9th. So you can hop on one of our spring trips to the BVI or the Bahamas, or you can join us in Italy, Greece, or Croatia. Just shoot us an email, hello@theawesomefactory.nyc, or ping us on social media, DM us, and we'd love to hear from you and hopefully welcome you aboard.